You've felt this, haven't you? That ache when you see her across the room, the one whose laugh seems to unlock some secret chamber in your chest. For 30 seconds, you believe you've glimpsed your missing half, your salvation in heels. But follow this man deeper into his private museum. Here, the walls breathe with portraits of every woman who ever made his pulse stutter. Sarah from college, who spoke 3 languages and wore vintage band t-shirts like armor. Maria from the coffee shop, whose smile felt like absolution for sins he'd never confessed. Each painting glows with impossible perfection, each frame inscribed with the same desperate prayer. She will save me from myself. The museum stretches endlessly, corridors branching into more corridors. In the hall of almost, he keeps the ones who got away. In the gallery of never, those who never noticed him at all. The centerpiece is the shrine of the next one, always empty, always waiting for tomorrow's revelation. But watch what happens when he brings a real woman here. See how quickly her flesh dims against these luminous phantoms. Her laugh becomes ordinary. Her flaws magnify under the museum's harsh light. She cannot compete with the perfection of his projections, the idealized feminine that exists only in the architecture of his longing. Schopenhauer whispered this truth in the shadows of his philosophy. What we call love is often the will wearing a beautiful mask, driving us toward reproduction through the illusion of completion. We mistake our own projected fantasies for the divine feminine, then rage when reality fails to match our fevered imaginings. The man in the museum doesn't love women. He loves the idea of being loved, the fantasy of wholeness through another. Each real woman becomes a disappointment, not because she lacks worth, but because she possesses the unforgivable sin of being human rather than holy. The ancients called it enchantment. Today, psychology names it the enema projection, Jung's term for the unconscious, feminine aspect of the male psyche cast outward onto real women who can never fulfill its impossible demands. It manifests in the modern dating apps, where men swipe endlessly, seeking the digital goddess. In the workplace, where a colleague's competence becomes confused with romantic destiny. In relationships that crumble under the weight of expectations no mortal can bear. Through Schopenhauer's lens, this is the will's cruelest joke, making us believe that another person can silence the fundamental suffering of existence, when in truth, we're simply projecting our own unlived potential onto external forms. The museum grows larger with each failed connection, each disappointment adding another wing to this palace of impossible standards. What portraits hang in your private gallery? Which phantoms do you worship while the living women in your life compete with ghosts they'll never become? We fall in love with our own projections, then blame reality for failing to live up to our dreams. A child's marionette dangles from broken strings, its painted smile cracked and fading. Remember being 8 years old, making your toys dance for an audience of stuffed animals? That godlike feeling of control, of being the author of every movement, every story. Now picture Marcus, 34, standing in his mahogany office, watching his secretary through the glass partition. For 3 years, he's orchestrated her career, subtle promotions, convenient projects that require late nights together, carefully timed compliments that make her blush. She thinks it's professional mentorship. He believes it's seduction artistry. His desk drawer holds a leather journal filled with observations. Emma responds well to validation about her intelligence, seems insecure about her appearance. Opportunity there. Mentioned father issues during coffee, file under emotional vulnerabilities. Each entry is a puppet string, invisible threads he pulls to make her dance toward his desires. The office becomes his theater. He scripts conversations weeks in advance, engineers situation is where he appears as her rescuer, her guide, her inevitable romantic destiny. When she laughs at his jokes, he marks it as manipulation successful. When she stays late to help with his presentations, he sees confirmation of his irresistible influence. But watch the puppet master's face when Emma announces her engagement to someone else, someone she met at a bookstore, someone who never calculated her responses or cataloged her weaknesses. Marcus's strings snap one by one, his illusion of control collapsing into the truth he's been fleeing. He was never the puppeteer. He was the puppet, dancing to the rhythm of his own desperate need to feel powerful, to matter, to be chosen. In his journal's final entry, he writes, "The greatest manipulation is the one we perform on ourselves, convincing ourselves we're in control when we're merely reacting to our own fears of abandonment." Schopenhauer understood this paradox, that our attempts to control others reveal only our own enslavement to the will's demands. We mistake manipulation for mastery, not seeing that every scheme binds us deeper into suffering. The psychology texts call it manipulative control, a defense mechanism born from early powerlessness, manifesting as an obsessive need to engineer others' emotions and responses. It appears in modern relationships as love bombing, in corporate culture as toxic leadership, in social media as carefully curated personas designed to elicit specific reactions. The manipulator believes he's playing chess, while everyone else plays checkers, never realizing he's trapped in a game where the only winning move is not to play. Through Schopenhauer's gaze, this is the will disguising itself as wisdom, convincing us that if we can just control enough variables, engineer enough outcomes, we can escape the fundamental uncertainty of existence. But control is the prison, not the key. In myth, it was Pygmalion's curse. In you, it's the exhausting choreography of trying to make others love you through psychological architecture. Do you recognize the puppet strings you pull? The invisible theater where you're both director and trapped performer, convinced that if you just manipulate the script perfectly enough, someone will finally choose to love you without being coerced. The greatest tyranny is the one we impose on ourselves, believing we can control our way to happiness. A man sits in a room full of empty picture frames, each one labeled with a different woman's name and the precise date she broke his heart. You know this ritual, don't you? The way you polish your wounds until they gleam like metals, the careful cataloging of every slight, every rejection, every moment someone chose someone else instead of you. Meet David, who has transformed heartbreak into high art. His apartment is a shrine to romantic failure, ticket stubs from dates that led nowhere, screenshots of unanswered messages, a playlist titled "Women Who Destroyed Me" that he updates monthly like a sacred text. He speaks of love in the language of war casualties, recounting each betrayal with the reverence of a veteran describing fallen comrades. Jennifer was my first heartbreak, he tells anyone who'll listen, his voice heavy with practiced pain. She taught me that beautiful women are always lying. Sarah confirmed it. Rachel made it gospel. Each story has been rehearsed until it gleams, polished by repetition, into something that feels profound rather than pathetic. At parties, he gravitates toward other wounded souls, sharing war stories over whiskey. His dating profile reads like a Gothic poem, looking for someone real in a world of illusions, been burned before, but still believe in magic. He's become a connoisseur of his own suffering, addicted to the bitter wine of romantic martyrdom, but observe the moment when someone genuinely wants to heal these wounds. When therapy is suggested, when a friend offers to set him up with someone kind and available. Watch how quickly he recoils, how desperately he clings to his beautiful sorrows, without his collection of romantic failures. Who would he be without the grand narrative of being too sensitive for this cruel world? What story would he tell? The cruelest revelation comes when he meets someone who actually wants to love him. Her genuine affection feels foreign, almost insulting. She doesn't appreciate his carefully curated melancholy. She wants to build something new rather than worship at the altar of his past pain. So he sabotages it, creates the very rejection he claims to fear, adding her frame to his collection with a mixture of relief and despair. Schopenhauer recognized this peculiar attachment to suffering, the way we sometimes choose familiar pain over uncertain joy, because at least suffering gives us identity, purpose, a reason to exist. The clinical term is trauma bonding with the self, a psychological pattern where individuals become addicted to their own emotional pain, using past wounds as both shield and sword. It manifests in social media as the humble brag post about being too real for most people, in dating as the person who always finds something wrong with healthy partners, in therapy as the client who collects diagnoses like trophies but resists actual healing. Through Schopenhauer's lens, this is the will's most insidious trick, convincing us that our suffering is sacred, that our wounds are our wisdom, when they're actually chains we've learned to call jewelry. The philosopher would say we mistake the weight of our pain for the depth of our souls. In folklore, it was the cursed mirror that showed only flaws. In you, it's the compulsive rehearsal of your romantic failures until they become your identity. What sorrows do you keep on display? Which heartbreaks have you polished until they shine brighter than any joy you might create? Are you ready to be loved, or are you too attached to the tragic beauty of being misunderstood? We often love our wounds more than we love our healing, because suffering, at least, gives us something to call our own. A man builds walls from mirrors, creating a fortress where every surface reflects only himself. You've built it too, haven't you? That invisible boundary between your authentic self and the world's expectations. That careful distance that protects you from the terrible vulnerability of being truly seen. Enter Thomas, standing in his immaculate apartment that looks like a magazine spread, every book spine aligned, every throw pillow positioned just so. His refrigerator holds only the foods that photograph well. His medicine cabinet contains products he researched for hours to ensure they project the right image of success, health, intellectual sophistication. On dating apps, his photos tell a carefully constructed story. Thomas hiking, borrowed gear, hike lasted 20 minutes. Thomas at a wine tasting, he ordered water. Thomas reading philosophy in a coffee shop. The book was a prop, the coffee untouched. Every interaction is performed through this glass house of manufactured perfection. This transparent cage, he's convinced, will protect him from rejection. When women message him, he responds with calculated delays, never too eager, never too distant. His conversation follows a script he's refined through countless failed connections, witty but not desperate, deep but not pretentious, mysterious but not unavailable. He's become a ghost of himself. A performance so polished that even he's forgotten what exists underneath. But watch what happens when someone sees through the glass. When Sarah, A woman who laughs too loudly and cries at commercials asks him what he's actually afraid of. The question shatters something fundamental. His carefully constructed persona cracks like winter ice, revealing the terrified boy beneath who believes that his authentic self is unlovable, unwanted, insufficient. The mirror walls begin to crack, showing not his reflection, but his truth. A man so desperate to be accepted that he's erased himself entirely, becoming a living mannequin dressed in other people's desires. Each crack reveals another authentic impulse he's buried. His love of terrible movies, his fear of commitment, his desperate need to be held while he cries, his dream of being a father, his terror that he's wasted years becoming someone else. Schopenhauer spoke of the veil of Maya, the illusion that separates us from reality. But sometimes we weave our own veils so thickly that we disappear behind them entirely. Psychologists call it false self syndrome, a defensive adaptation where individuals create an idealized persona to win approval while their authentic self withers in isolation. It appears in social media as the perfectly curated life that bears no resemblance to reality, in professional settings as imposter syndrome, in relationships as the exhausting performance of being who you think others want rather than who you are. Through Schopenhauer's understanding, this is the will convincing us that we can escape suffering through strategic self-erasure, never realizing that the greatest suffering comes from living as a stranger to yourself. The philosopher would recognize this as the ultimate illusion, believing that love earned through deception can ever truly satisfy. The ancient Greeks called it hubris. In you, it's the devastating loneliness of being loved for someone you're not. What glass house have you constructed around your true self? Which authentic parts of you are you convinced would be rejected if revealed? How many people love your performance while your real self dies of loneliness behind the mirrors? The greatest tragedy is not being rejected for who you are, but being accepted for who you're not. A man stands at the edge of a cliff, holding a map to lands that exist only in his dreams, refusing to turn toward the garden blooming behind him. This is the final truth, the one that cuts deepest. Sometimes we choose fantasy, not because reality has failed us, but because reality demands something fantasy never will. That we show up as ourselves, imperfect and uncertain, without the armor of our beautiful illusions. Meet Alan, 42, still waiting for his life to begin. His basement office is wallpapered with vision boards, images of the woman he'll marry, always faceless but perfectly formed. The career that will finally fulfill him, always just out of reach. The version of himself that women will fight over. 10 pounds lighter, 3 degrees more confident, infinitely more successful than he is today. Every morning, he checks dating apps, not for connection, but for evidence that his fantasy woman might exist. Every evening, he falls asleep to the same story. Tomorrow, he'll transform. Tomorrow, he'll be worthy. Tomorrow, the universe will deliver the love he deserves. He's been living in tomorrow for 20 years. When his therapist suggests he try dating someone real, perhaps Janet, the kind librarian who shares his love of science fiction, who laughs at his jokes and asks thoughtful questions about his work, he recoils with practiced explanations. I'm not ready yet. I need to work on myself first. She deserves someone better. But the truth is simpler and more terrible. Janet is real, and reality requires him to be real too. In his map collection, he traces routes to impossible shores while the woman next door tends her garden, occasionally glancing over the fence with genuine curiosity about the man who seems so lost in his own yard. She's planted flowers that bloom in sequence, creating beauty that changes with seasons. She reads books on her porch, drinks coffee without checking her phone, exists fully in the present moment he's been fleeing his entire adult life. But to love her would mean abandoning his maps, accepting that happiness doesn't require perfection. That connection happens between flawed humans rather than idealized projections. It would mean grieving the fantasy woman who kept him company in his loneliness, the impossible future that excused his present inaction. The cruelest moment comes when Janet moves away, leaving only a note. "I hope you find whatever you're looking for." He realizes then that he wasn't looking for anything real. He was hiding from it, using the search as a shield against the vulnerability of actually finding. Schopenhauer understood this final deception, that we often prefer the beautiful suffering of unfulfilled longing to the complex satisfaction of actual love, because longing asks nothing of us except that we continue to long. This is romantic idealization disorder, the psychological pattern of preferring fantasy relationships to real ones, maintaining impossible standards not as a path to love, but as protection from it. It manifests in modern culture as the person who's always almost ready for love, in entertainment as our addiction to romantic comedies that sell impossible standards, in therapy as the client who discusses their readiness for love but sabotages every opportunity for genuine connection. Through Schopenhauer's final insight, this is the will's ultimate trick, convincing us that we're seeking love when we're actually fleeing from it, that our high standards protect us when they actually imprison us in the beautiful jail of our own impossibility. In ancient mythology, it was Tantalus reaching for fruit that vanished at his touch. In you, it's the eternal postponement of your own happiness. But here's the whisper of hope that Schopenhauer himself might have overlooked. Sometimes the garden behind you is real. Sometimes the woman next door is tending actual flowers, not metaphorical ones. Sometimes love isn't the grand transformation you've been promised, but the quiet recognition that you're already enough right now, imperfect and human, and worthy of connection without earning it first. What impossible shores are you mapping while real love waits patiently in your periphery? Which fantasies have you treasured so long that they've become more precious than the possibility of actual happiness? Are you ready to burn the maps and see what grows when you finally plant your feet in the soil of now? The greatest love affair of your life might be waiting, not in your dreams of tomorrow, but in your acceptance of today.